Think about the smartest woman you've ever met. Now, be honest with yourself for a second. She probably didn't look the way you expected. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room. She wasn't quoting studies or steering every conversation or making sure you walked away impressed. You might have passed her on the street and noticed nothing at all. But if you sat with her for an hour, really sat with her, you'd feel it. A depth. A way of seeing that doesn't travel in straight lines. And here's the part that stings, because it might be about you. The habits that actually signal a high-powered mind are almost always the same habits the world calls strange, messy, difficult, broken. Today, we're going through 10 of them. There's a paradox sitting at the center of human intelligence that almost nobody talks about. The sharper a woman's mind, the further her inner world drifts from what the outer world expects of her. She processes more. She notices more. She feels more, and she feels it faster. And because of that, she behaves in ways that look odd to people who simply aren't running at that depth. Sit with that for a moment. The very behaviors that make her seem off are the direct fingerprints of a brain working at higher capacity. She isn't performing difference. She genuinely cannot help but process the world differently. And that processing leaves marks on everything she does. So let's look at those marks, one at a time. The first one is something almost every woman has done, and almost nobody admits. You talk to yourself, not a mumble under your breath. The full conversation. Pacing your bedroom at midnight, arguing both sides out loud, until something finally clicks into place. From the outside, it looks unhinged, especially for women, who are expected to be composed and certain at all times. But here's what's actually happening in there. When your mind is holding 20 possibilities at once, keeping them locked inside is like organizing a library in the dark. The moment you speak them, structure appears. Psychologist Lev Vygotsky called this inner speech, the bridge between thought and language. You're not talking to yourself because you're alone. You're talking because your mind is too loud to stay silent. Then there's the night. You've been told your whole life that early rising is the secret to everything. That night owls are lazy, undisciplined, wasting the morning. And for women, that pressure lands twice as hard, because you're supposed to be the one who has it all together before sunrise. But research on circadian rhythm and cognitive ability keeps finding the opposite pattern. People with higher intelligence tend to drift toward later schedules. There's a specific kind of silence that only exists between midnight and 4. The notifications stop. The expectations stop. Every role you played all day, the listener, the fixer, the one who holds it together, finally falls away. And in that silence, your mind finally has room to go as deep as it's been aching to go. Now, the messy one, the scattered desk, the piles, the drawer you don't open in front of guests, and the quiet shame you've carried about it for years. Women get judged brutally for this, because somewhere along the way we started treating tidiness as a moral quality, and girls learn that lesson painfully young. But a well-known study out of the University of Minnesota found something different. People working in disordered spaces generated more creative, more original ideas than people in immaculate ones. And here's what outsiders miss entirely. Inside that chaos, there's a system. You can find exactly what you need in seconds, because you know which pile holds which project. The disorder is only disorder to someone who doesn't have your internal map. Now notice something about those first 3. They all happen when you're alone. They're the private signature of a mind in motion, the things you do when nobody's watching. But the next set is where it gets genuinely painful, because these habits show up in how you relate to other people. And when your mind runs differently, it doesn't just change how you think. It changes how you connect, how much you can tolerate, what drains you, and what fills you. That's where the misunderstanding really begins, especially for women, who are expected to be warm and available and effortlessly easy on demand. So what happens when you're none of those things? Not because you can't be, but because your mind is simply somewhere else. You crave solitude, and people keep reading it as coldness. You've been called distant, intimidating, hard to get to know. You've been told to smile more, open up more, come out more. And you've probably wondered, quietly, if something in you is defective for needing so much time alone. So here's the distinction that changes everything. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is choosing to be alone, because your own company is genuinely rich enough. Hans Eysenk's arousal theory of introversion suggested that some brains sit at a higher baseline of internal stimulation, so extra input doesn't energize them, it floods them. The brunch that recharges your friends flattens you. That isn't coldness. That's a mind already running at full volume, protecting its capacity by choosing depth over frequency. And then there's the forgetting. You lose your keys constantly. You walk into a room and stand there, blank. You search for the glasses that are on your face. You leave a text unanswered for 3 days, not out of malice, but because it genuinely evaporated. And people tease you. Or worse, they decide you're flaky, scattered, not really paying attention. But cognitive load theory explains this precisely. Attention is a finite resource, and a brain carrying heavy problems deliberately stops spending bandwidth on where the remote control went. This isn't memory failure. It's memory tree-off. Your mind made a ruthless, intelligent decision about what deserves storage and the trivial lost. The other half of that pattern is questioning. You don't accept things just because everyone else does. Traditions, rules, advice, the way it's always been done, all of it goes through your own filter first. And if the reasoning doesn't hold, you say so. Psychologists Cacioppo and Petty called this need for cognition, the genuine hunger to think hard about things, rather than take the easy answer. It's strongly linked to intelligence. It's also the exact trait that has cost women for centuries. Ask too many questions, and you get labeled difficult, argumentative. Too much. You get told to soften your tone and let it go. But you can't let it go, because the woman asking the uncomfortable question is usually the one who finds the better answer. Then there's your humor, and the particular loneliness of watching a joke land on blank faces. Because when a man's joke misses, he's having an off day. When yours misses, something must be wrong with her. Understanding sarcasm, dark humor, layered irony, it's strongly correlated with cognitive ability. Because your brain has to hold several meanings at once. The literal words, the intended meaning, and the gap between them that creates the laugh, all inside a single second. Your humor is quick, stacked, subtle, and people catch the surface layer and miss the two underneath. And the same ability that builds those jokes is what lets you sit calmly in gray areas that make other people squirm. Now we enter harder territory, because these next two genuinely hurt. Overthinking, first. And you don't just overthink your work. You overthink your friendships, your decisions, the tone of an email you sent 3 days ago. Did I say too much? Not enough? Did I sound arrogant or too soft? Daniel Kahneman's dual process theory described this as slow thinking, deliberate, systematic, exhaustive. It's thorough. It catches errors nobody else would have seen. But pair that engine with the social hypervigilance most women develop by adulthood, the constant scanning of how you're being received, and you get a mind that almost never gets to rest. Its twin is procrastination. And I need you to hear this one correctly. You don't delay because you're lazy. You delay because you can see, in perfect detail, the version of the thing that would be excellent, and the distance between that vision and your first messy attempt feels unbearable. Research on perfectionism links this exact gap to avoidance. The higher your standard, the more threatening the starting line becomes. So you wait. You refine it internally, sometimes for so long that the deadline arrives before the courage does. But listen, the mechanism that freezes you before you start is the same mechanism that, once you finally begin, produces work other people simply cannot match. The last one is disappearing. You're at dinner, across from someone you love. They're talking. You're nodding, making the right sounds. But you're gone. You're solving something in the background, running a scenario, building a small world behind your eyes. People call it zoning out. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, the system that switches on the moment you stop focusing outward. And it tends to be unusually active in highly creative, highly intelligent minds. It's where distant ideas get connected, where futures get simulated. So the next time someone says, "Are you even listening?" and that little flicker of guilt moves through you, remember, the thing that pulled you away is the same thing that gives you your best ideas. So, there they are. 10 habits. 10 fingerprints of a mind that runs at a different resolution. And I want to leave you with a reframe, not just a list. The world will always label what it can't understand. It will call your solitude coldness, your questions difficulty, your overthinking excess, your daydreaming a waste. your late nights undisciplined. But those labels are not the truth about you. They're just the outer edge of someone else's perception. Every single habit we talked about today comes from the same root. A brain noticing more, connecting more, feeling more deeply, and needing more depth than the environment reliably offers. That isn't a disorder. That's a different order entirely. And if you've spent your life being told you're too much and not enough, in the same breath, hear this clearly. Your rarity was never the weakness. It was always the quietest kind of strength. Drop a comment with the number of the habit that found you today, because I genuinely want to know which one hit. And subscribe, so the next one reaches you. But before you go, ask yourself one more question. Because this is where it gets interesting. If your mind processes the world at this depth, what is it doing with the emotions you absorb from everyone around you? That is exactly what we're decoding next. Goodbye, and I'll see you there.